Hello guys, this is Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com, and we are here today live with Shop Talk number 40. Hey, we're about 2 minutes late getting this thing started. Right at 11:30 on the dot, I said go live, and I got an error back from YouTube saying your live streaming isn't working. So I backed out, came back, and I think we are live now. I certainly hope we are. Is anybody out there? Let's see. We are getting some comments coming in. Looks like Sambov is here. Anthony, hello. Opal, man, always good to see you here, Opal. He's one of our regulars. XR, Tech Trenza, Sunil, Josh, Thaddeus. All right, guys, it looks like we've got some people coming on. I will need you to pour yourself a nice strong cup of black coffee and get ready for an exciting program, because this is just something that I have always been interested in, because I am interested in numbers. And so we are going to be talking today about numbers. And let's see, I got to take some seconds here and make some adjustments, because I got caught off guard with this last minute error. So I've got to configure my windows here just a minute. Okay, and get my studio set up. That kind of really threw me off when I said go live and it said you're not live. So I've got to go back and get my windows in the right order, and then I will get back with you guys. We are almost there. Okay, I think I can see everything I need to see. We got a lot of people coming in and saying hi. Good to see you. Hey guys, like I say, I teach math, and so I am really interested in numbers, and numbers do strange things sometime. And so what we're going to look at today is the question of, do most numbers start with 1? So if you just go out and find random list of numbers, and you looked at those numbers, or just random sheets of paper that had numbers on them, and you looked at those numbers and you sort of inspected the numbers, let's say you had 1,000 numbers. Would you expect, out of 1,000 numbers that you found on some list or some set of data, would you expect those numbers, like if you had 1,000 numbers on a page, those numbers to have 100 that start with 1, 100 that start with 2, 100 that start with 3, 100 that start with 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, sort of 100 start with each digit? Or would most of the numbers on the page start with 1? Give me your answer down below. Let me know what you think. Would numbers randomly start with distribution from 1 to 9, or would most numbers start with the number 1? And if you guys have been out there Googling, don't cheat. Okay, let people really think through this, and if you looked up the answer, don't answer, but just randomly, what would you think most numbers would start with in the real world? Okay, let's see. Getting some, who discovered 0? Okay, that's pretty funny. Okay, Exit says that numbers do strange things. Your bank account numbers keep going down. 0, you can't really say that things start with 0, because all numbers would have leading zeros, and so I'm talking about the first significant digit. Okay, so let's see. Thaddeus believes 1/10 of the numbers would start with 1. Okay, so you would say 1/10 would start with 1, so you would sort of say 1/10 at 1, 1/10 at 2, 1/10 at 3. And so that's kind of what you would expect, right? You would expect that if I just go out and find a sheet of paper with numbers on it, what you would expect is that 1/10 of them would start with 1, 1/10 of them would start with 2, 1/10 of them would start with 3, 1/10 of them would start with 4. Well, let's investigate this, and then we'll dig kind of in deep, a little bit deeper, and see if we could understand it. So what I am going to do is I'm going to switch over to this view, and I'm going to get out of your way, and then I think I will come over here, and let's just find something that would have numbers on it, a sheet of paper that would have a bunch of numbers. Well, I don't know. What do you think? Where could I find a bunch of numbers? How about if I looked for the Apple quarterly report? Is that random enough for you? The Apple fourth quarter results. All right. And it comes down here. This doesn't seem to have numbers on it, but I come down here. It says view the financial statement. So I will click on that, and now I'm going to enlarge this and just go over. You can see it's just a bunch of random numbers, and I'm going to come over here and I'll make it a little bigger so hopefully you guys can see it. And I'm just going to go in and we're going to look at this. Can I make it bigger one time and you guys still see the whole thing? Okay, I think you can see that, right? Okay, so let's see on this page how many numbers start with the number 1. Now, understand I'm going to do the best I can. I probably can't. I'm going to try to count quickly so I won't be, so I won't be perfect on it, but I'm just going to kind of come across here. So I have, there's 1, 2, and then there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then I got 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and then 17, 18, and then 19, and then 20, 21, nothing there, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and then 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39. So it looked like 39 numbers started with the number 1. So I'm going to put that here, 39, and this was for Apple. Okay, 39 numbers started with the number 1. Now let's go in and, okay, some of you guys said that I missed some. Okay, I'm not counting perfectly, but I'm just trying to go fast. Let's count 2s now, okay? I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I got 7, 8, and then I've got 9, 10, and here we go. I've got 10 so far, 10 so far, 11, 12, 13, no, I got 12. That one didn't count. 12. Okay, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and then 26, 27. So starting with the number 2, I had 27. Let's go on and do 3. So there was more 1s than 2s. Now let's go 3. And would you guys agree that this is just kind of random? I just picked a random stock. I'm thinking I've got an iPhone in my hand, so I said, let's look at Apple. You could do this with any, but we're going to do 3s now. Okay, so let's do 3s. So we're coming across here. Wow, you see we're not finding a lot of 3s. 1, 2, 3s. 3. Okay. 4, 5. 5, 6, 7. 8. 9. Okay, we got 10, 11. Looks like we got 11. Okay, So as we look at this, we had 39 numbers started with a 1, 27 started with a 2, 11 start with a 3. Okay, now let's do, okay, somebody said find 1 or 2. I'm not counting the number of 1s on the page. I'm not counting the number of 2s on the page. I'm counting, oh, you're saying space. I guess you could maybe do it with a count, but I don't want to try to do that on the fly. So now let's see how many on number 4s, okay? So let's look for number 4s here. So we're going to come up here, and we have 1. We have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're up to 7. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay, so we jump back up a little bit to 13. We're going to look at for 5s now, and I'm not going to do this on all of them, but we're just going to kind of look for a trend here. So now let's look for 5s. So I've got 1, 2, 3. I've got 3, and coming across 4. There's 5, 6. 7. And then 8. Okay, so it looks like we've got 8 5s. Let's count the 6s real quick. Okay, so I'm going to come up here and look for anything starting with a 6. I've got 1, 2 right off the bat. 3, 4. I got 4. I got 5, 6. I got 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay, so that jumped up a little bit. Let's do 7s, and then we'll just see if we can see a trend here. Okay, let's do 7s and see if we see a trend. Okay, so if I look at the number 7, I'm looking for anything that starts with a 7. Anything that starts with a 7. Okay, I got 1, 2, 3, 4. 5. 6. Okay, I got 6. Okay, guys, if we look at this trend here, and this was just a random thing. I said, let's look at the Apple quarterly report. And we see that if we counted the numbers, we had 39 that started with the number 1. We had 27 that started with the number 2, 11 with the number 3, 13 with the number 4, 8 with the number 5, 13 with 6, and then 7 we got to 6. And if we went to 9, it would just be a couple. And so you definitely see a trend that there are many more numbers that start with 1, and it's not just 1 is greater than 2. If you look at larger data sets, what you find is there's more numbers that start with 1 than there are that start with 2. There are more numbers that start with 2 than start with 3. There's more of 3s than 4s. And by the time you get down to 9s, you just usually, hey, Kurt, man, Thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate that. Really appreciate that. That's great fun. Okay, so what you can see is that as you get to progressively larger numbers, there are more and more numbers. I mean, there are fewer and fewer numbers that start with that number. And by far, most numbers on this sheet of paper started with 1. Each kind is getting progressively less, as King AMK said. Yep, that is right. Well, you said, oh, well, that's a financial report. That's just a quirky thing associated with financial reports. Well, let's look at something that would be completely different. Let's look at the population of states. Let's look at the population of states in the United States. And so I'm going to search on population of U.S. states, and I'm going to come here, and okay, you can see there's a lot of different columns, but I'm just going to do this first column because it'll be easier to count, and we'll try to kind of go through this real quickly. And we're going to count once. Let's see, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I've got 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And then I've got 15, 16. So I've got 16, and this is population. I've got 16 that start with 1. Okay, let's go back and do 2s now. This is actually easier than the other list because you just go down. So there's 1, 2. And then there's 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we got 5 that start with a 2. Now let's check 3s. How many start with a 3? We've got 1. And then we've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so we got 8. And now how many start with a 4? We're going to check 4s now. We come down here and we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 that start with a 4. Okay, let's check 5. So I've got all the way down here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. And I've got 5. And I got 6, 7. So I've got 7. Let's check for 6s. This should go pretty fast. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I got 6. So I've got 6 that start with a 6. Let's check 7s. This will go real fast. Let's check 7s. I've got 1, 2 that start with a 7, 2. And then I've got 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I got 5 that start with a 7. Now let's go to 8. For an 8, I've got 1, 2. I've got 3. I got 3 that start with an 8. And then how many start with a 9? Okay, I've got 1, 2. I got 2 that start with a 9. Okay, guys, are you seeing the trend here? What is the trend? When I looked at Apple stock, just a random page from a random report from Apple, there were 39 numbers that started with 1, and then there were down to 6 numbers that started with 7. And then on the population of U.S. states, there are 16 states whose population starts with a 1, and only 2 states whose population starts with a 2. Okay, so isn't that strange that you would think the population of states would be totally independent from the price of Apple stock? You wouldn't think there would be any relationship between how many people live in different states in the United States versus what the price of Apple stock is. Well, let's try to do something completely different that would just be a list of numbers. Let's say length of world rivers. Okay, world rivers by length, list of rivers by length. Let's go there real quick here. Let's see if we can just find some numbers. Okay, it looks like we've got some numbers here. I'll just go with the KM one, and let's start with 1. Okay, I'm looking for anything that starts with a 1. Okay, starting right here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87. So there are 87 rivers. So this is rivers whose length starts with a 1. 87 rivers whose lengths start with a 1. Okay, now let's go to a 2. The 2 started right here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. So you go from 87 to 29. Okay, now let's check for 3s. Okay, this is where the 3s start. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So there's 14 whose rivers start with a 3. And now we'll go to 4. This will go really quick now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 7 rivers whose lengths start with a 4. And now 5, we have 1, 2, 3. Okay. And then 6 is 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and no rivers start with a 7, no rivers start with a 8, no rivers start with a 9. So do you see I've got just random list of numbers here from like numbers on a random Apple quarterly report? Most numbers start with 1, and there's progressively fewer and fewer of the higher digits. If I look at population of states in the United States, there's 16 states whose population starts with a 1 and only 2 whose population starts with a 9. And then on length of rivers, it's 87 down to 4 by the time you get to 6. And so just looking at 3 random sets of data, it appears that overwhelmingly the numbers we use, most numbers start with 1. Oh man, okay, I'm sorry, you guys couldn't see that. I see that I didn't have that, but I will show you what I meant to show you on the rivers. This is what I meant to show you on the rivers. It was just a length of the list length of rivers in numerical order, and that is what I was counting. I'm sorry that you were not able to see that, but I can show it to you there. Okay, but what I wanted you to see is nice and big how it appears that most numbers start with 1. Now, this is the amazing things, guys. This is the amazing thing, guys. This is really incredibly universal. That it's sort of like almost any list of numbers, almost any data set that you find, this is what you find. There is a pattern, and the larger the data set, the more pronounced this effect is. And so let's kind of look at it, and let's see if we can begin to sort of understand why this is the case, why it looks like most numbers start with 1. Well, let's just take the example of stock, because I think that's something that we can say how stocks behave. And if we do that, let's just say that we looked at a company like, let's just say GM. That's a good Dow stock, General Motors. And let's look at price. All right. Well, let's say that the price of GM stock starts at $100 a share. Okay. Or let's say that we start in the year 2020, and the price of the stock was $100. Now I'm just making those two numbers up, but what we know is we know that stocks grow on average over time about 7% per year, right? Every year the value of a stock, kind of like with noise on top of it, will go up by about 7%. So how would I calculate this one next year for 2021? The price of stock would be its previous, this would be equal. Okay, I'm sorry, you guys aren't seeing that either. I need to come over here. Okay, so I've got GM, and in 2020, its price is $100, let's say, and then the price in 2021 will be 7% more than that. So we would say 1.07 times the price the year before. Okay, so it would be $107. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pull these down to help us kind of fill it out for a long period of time. That didn't work. Let's try that again. Okay, just kind of pull that down for, let's say, 50 years. Okay. And so I've got that, and then I'll pull this equation down for 50. Okay, so again, let's look at this. I've got a 1, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 ones. And then I have 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay, so you see out of 50 years, 20 years, the value of the stock starts with a 1. Okay, so let's see, that was 20. So for 1, there was 20. Okay, now let's look at 2. Okay, we come down here, and then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Hey, Philippe! Wow! Thank you, Philippe. You're so generous. Really appreciate that. Okay, so how many years did the stock price start with a 1? 20 years. How many did it start with a 2? 9 years. Let's go to 3. This will go real fast. How many years is the stock price in a 3? Well, I see 1, 2, 3, 4. I see 4. Okay. How many years does the stock start with a 4? Okay. I come down here and I see 1, 2, 3. And then let's look for how many years the stock price would be 5. I've got 1, 2, 3 on that as well. And these effects become more pronounced the longer the list are, the bigger the list of numbers. And we'll go on to 6. And then that would be 1, 2. And then we'll go 7. And let's see how many years it starts with a 7. Looks like 1, 2. And we'll go on to 8 and 9 just to have a bigger data set this time. 8 and 9. And let's see how many times it starts with an 8. It looks like 1, 2, and 2 on the 9 as well. Okay, and what would happen would be if we had a longer list of more years, this effect would be more and more pronounced. You would start seeing differences between 7 and 8 and 9. So this is kind of an unexpected result, isn't it? Oh, okay, you want me to start? Okay, Graham, I think you're suggesting, Graham, that this is a bias because I started with 100, but it's really not. It's just I don't want to take the time, but you could start with 200, 300, you could start with 900. No matter what you start with, it's always going to roll around, and 1 is going to win and 9 is going to lose. And so what you can do is you can do this at home, and you can see that 1 is always going to win. Now, let's see, we saw this in all of this different data, right? We saw it in real Apple stock, we saw it in the population of states. We saw it in the length of rivers. And now what we can see is that when we simulate stock numbers, we see that it comes out that way as well. And let's see if we can understand it. And so I'm going to come here and I am going to select all of this data. And this is just saying what we know happens in the real world. Typically, stocks will rise at 7% per year. And so what I am going to do is I am going to insert, and I'm going to insert a scatter plot like this, okay? And so now we can look at the data. And so this is kind of compounded growth at 7% per annum. Well, let's look at this down here where we start. Well, it's very, very flat. Okay, so in the area that I am where 100 is, starting with a 1, I have a whole lot of data points. But then it goes through the 2s quicker, it goes through the 3s quicker, it goes through the 4s quicker. By the time we get out here to 9, you can see that there are only like 2 data points. Well, then you could say, well, now you're back to 1, and 1's going to be worse than 9. Yeah, this one's going to be worse than 9, but the corresponding 9 further up the chart is even going to be slimmer. So it is always going to have more numbers that start with 1 than any other number anytime you have anything associated with exponential growth. And that's just kind of like one of the reasons that this happens is most things grow exponentially or die exponentially. So if you think of the heat of your coffee cup, the temperature of the coffee doesn't drop linearly, it drops exponentially. If you have bacteria and bacteria is growing, how does it grow? It grows exponentially. If you look at how populations grow, they grow exponentially. And anything that has this multiplicative property to it will always have a number that starts with 1 more than any other number. Now, some of you guys, I think, have kind of Googled this and you've sort of figured this out, but it's kind of interesting, the story behind it. Some of you guys researched this, I think, as we were getting started, and the mathematical theory for this, there's actually a mathematical theory, and it is called Benford's Law, and it was a physics publication that was published in 1938 by a man named Benford, and Benford worked for General Electric, okay? Now, this is the interesting thing that Benford noticed. He went to the General Electric library, and if you think General Electric is a huge company, and it makes all types of products from light bulbs to electric generators to wires to just almost anything, household appliances, almost anything you could imagine, General Electric makes it. So they have a huge team of scientists and engineers that are doing all types of mathematical calculations. Well, when Benford went to the General Electric library, he needed to solve a problem, so he got this book of logarithms, okay? Now, if you were going to do a logarithm, you would just get out your calculator, type in the number, and then hit log, and it would tell you the log. But back in the day, they didn't have calculators, so they had books, and those books were books of logarithms. So you could look up the number 1 and look up what its logarithm was. And so you could kind of look up, you know, like let's say you started at 100. What's the logarithm of 100, 101, 102, 103? There were just these logs starting, let's say, at 100 and going to millions and many hundreds of pages of tables that just gave you the logarithm of numbers. Well, as he got the book and looked at it, the edge showed a very interesting property. And what that edge was that there were regions of the book that were just all, you know, soiled and wrinkled and very heavily used, tattered. And then it became less and less tattered, and then certain pages like had never been looked at, and then all of a sudden you would have pages that were really heavily used. And so as he looked at the pattern of the edge of the pages, it would go from very heavily used to less, and then heavily used less. Well, as he said, looked up in there, what are these pages that people are looking at so much? It was pages of the logarithms of numbers that started with 1, and then less worn on the pages that started with 2. So when you looked at all the things that General Electric did, People were working more than anything else with numbers that started with 1. And then that is actually how he ended up coming up with this law. And so it's kind of interesting. You guys should play around with this. Just go to Wikipedia and just look up things, because it is incredibly universal in real data that most of your numbers are going to start with 1. Now, if you wrote a program that just randomly generated random numbers, then that's different, because that you're forcing a distribution on numbers. You're forcing numbers to be random. But in the real world, when you're working with numbers, they usually aren't random. Why? Because the underlying physical properties that govern most physical behavior typically is associated with exponentials or logarithms, and then that leads to this interesting characteristic where you will find that most numbers start with a 1. Okay, let's look at your comments here. Let's see. Graham is saying it's biased because of small sample size. I agree that is correct with large sample sizes. Okay, well, it's amazing. Some of these sample sizes were pretty small, and you see it emerging pretty quickly, with numbers as, like for the rivers, I think there were probably well less than 100 rivers. And so even for data sets with just 100, it seems to be something that is true. And so I just find this interesting. I find it interesting that there are these kind of like unexpected patterns in numbers. And so, guys, what do you think? Tell me what your thoughts are on this. Do you find this type of thing interesting, like patterns that you can find in numbers that maybe you wouldn't expect? Waiting for some comments. Hey, you guys, come on, give me some comments here. Okay, can this be leveraged in the stock market? Okay, you're not. Okay, that's a really, really good question. You're not going to make money in the stock market based on this, because the trend is just always growing. And the way you would make money is just say, okay, for forever it seems like stock prices go up, and if you buy a stock, it's going to go up, but you would not be able to predict, you would not be able to make a prediction of as far as what stock to buy, because they're all kind of growing at the same rate. Okay, yes, okay. It says the IRS gets a bit uppity if you ask them about using, okay, actually, this is something like, there is something called digital forensics, or kind of like forensics on what you would call fraud. And this is one of the things they don't talk about, but this is the way that investigators detect fraud. Okay, because if you were an accountant and you were just going to sit down and make up numbers, let's say that you're going to cook the books, you're an accountant and you're going to cook the books, you would generate random numbers. You would just generate 23, 37, 48, 96, 68, 77. You would generate in your mind making up numbers. You would make up numbers that kind of started out more randomly. And so one of the things that fraud forensics does is they look at data and they looked for distributions of numbers which are not following Benford's law, and that is one of the huge red flags that go up that show a forensic investigator that fraud has occurred, because like every legitimate balance sheet that you look at will have this Benford distribution like what we saw in Apple Computer. And so one of the things the IRS can do is really quickly throw up a flag of tax returns that are fraudulent, because they will have numbers that don't follow Benford's law. Just a little tip. I'm not suggesting that if you generate fake data, you should force it to follow Benford's law, but that is one of the things that they actually do. Okay, let's see. You're asking why is it? Well, I kind of showed you, right? Come back over and just look at this list, and that's just the way it works. Get on Excel and just multiply a number by 1.07, and then no matter how big that list is, the bigger it is, the more perfectly it's going to follow Benford's law. But yeah, they use this quite a bit in accounting to determine forensics. Also, it's used in scientific data. So if you have somebody that is presenting scientific data and they have all these equations and all these numbers and submit a technical piece of research for publication, those numbers will or should follow Benford's law. And if they don't, that's an indication that the investigator, the scientific researcher, was fudging the numbers. Okay, it is not, no doubt impressive. Never thought about it. Okay, I think it's pretty neat. All right, so hopefully this kind of makes sense to you guys, and it's just something that I find is interesting because I've just played around with this quite a bit, and you find this Benford's law in really all types of things that you think should be random, but in fact, when you look into them, they're not random. That in almost anything that you could imagine, any data set that you could imagine, what you're going to find is most numbers start with 1. Okay, guys, I thought this was kind of a fun thing to play around with today, and hope you guys enjoyed it. Not so much engineering as it is math, but it's kind of like math in the real world, and it's just something that I was fascinated with. I kind of observed it a long time ago, before you had ready access to the internet, and I really didn't understand it, and it took me a long time to sort of figure out why this would be the case, but just always found it very interesting. Okay, guys, do you have any questions here? Let me kind of open it up for questions and answers and see if you guys have any questions on this topic. Are you interested in quirky little things with numbers like this, or you want me to get back to Arduinos and NVIDIA and things like that? Yeah, actually, Gaurav asked an interesting question, if there are letters that behave the same way. The interesting thing is, it's not because of Benford's law, but if you look at the dictionary and look at the distribution of letters, there are certain letters that occur much more often than other letters. And one of the things that you find is that letters like A, S, and ASLD, those occur very frequently, like A and S occur very frequently in words. And that's kind of one of the interesting things. If you look at the keyboard, where they put the A, the letter that you're going to be using the most, they put the A where it's the hardest for you to type, on your left hand in your pinky finger. All right, how did the A end up in the worst possible position? And the second most used letter, S, ended up in the second worst possible position. Well, that was because back in the day when the typewriters were manual, a person like a secretary was so fast at typing, she could type faster than what a mechanical typewriter could keep up. So they needed to slow her down. So what did they do? They put the most frequently used letters in the most inconvenient positions, and then the more frequently used, the most frequently used letters in the most inconvenient positions, and the less frequently used letters in more convenient positions. And that was to throttle back how fast you could type so that you would not jam the typewriter. But now here we are in the digital age, and we still have this keyboard that was probably developed 120 or 130 or 40 years ago, and it was designed by its very nature to be as awkward and as hard to use as possible. But now, even in the digital age, we are still stuck with that old standard. And believe me, there are so many people who have tried to change the keyboard to the natural keyboard that would allow you to type as fast as possible by putting the most used letters in the most convenient positions, but they could never take off because everybody buying a keyboard already knew how to use a keyboard, and therefore they wanted one that their brain was already programmed to. So it's like one of those crazy things that no matter how crazy it is, you just can't change it. So yes, we are stuck with the worst possible keyboard that you could ever imagine. Are you going to be remaking the Arduino with Python lessons? Garrett, that's a good question. What I really want to do is I think the next set of lessons I'm going to do are Python, because I think Python is a great language. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with how do you install Python on Windows 10. Then I'm going to teach Python. And then after you know how to use Python, then I'm going to teach you how to connect Python to Arduino. And then after you've connected Python to Arduino, then what I want to do is I want to go in and show you how to use VPython. And that's where you can do these 3D simulations. And then you can have the 3D simulations respond to what your Arduino is doing. And so I think that's really cool. I think it was a neat series of lessons, but the problem with the lessons that I have is I did them at a time that 2.7, Python 2.7 was the standard. We're now up to 3 point something, and Python 3 really is different than Python 2. So those old lessons that I have are kind of broken at this point. The other thing is it was an older version of VPython. Things have changed with the most recent version of VPython. And then the way that you get data from Arduino to Python, that has changed. And so some people are still taking those old lessons, but a lot of those things are broken. But I just think that Python is such a cool programming language. I want to do that. So I'd start by how to program in Python, then how to get Python to talk to Arduino, and then how to do visual Python, because you can just do some pretty stunning visuals with that. And so I think that is going to be the next series of lessons that I do. Okay, let's see. Opal, never thought about this, but it's quite interesting. Philippe says, thumbs up to Python. Yep, I would really like to do that. More lessons with XBs would be nice. SB wants XBs. Yeah, I'll tell you, those XB radios I just found to be kind of really annoying, because one thing is they lock up the serial port on the Arduino, and so you've got to be plugging and unplugging them. And then for the XB radios that I got, those little antennas were always falling off. They had very limited range. And so I think to make my Arduino talk to the outside world, I would really rather use Wi-Fi or use Ethernet than using the XP radios. And if you set them up on Wi-Fi, if you set your Arduinos up on Wi-Fi, you can talk Arduino to PC or Arduino to network, or Arduino to world. So I would probably be more interested in doing something on the Ethernet or Wi-Fi. Okay, updated Arduino and Python. Getting some good feedback on that. Okay, yes, I realized that the Python lessons wouldn't work with my Python 3 knowledge. Yeah, you can kind of make it work, but there's like 4 or 5 things that are different that just really make your life can you even code in Fortran? I mean, can you even find the Fortran programming language? Man, I learned to code on Fortran, and to this day, I love Fortran. You know, Fortran had the old go-to statement where you could just say, go to line 225, and it would hop to line 225. Programming to me has never been the same since they took out the old go-to statement. Are you doing those Python videos soon? I was actually hoping I'd watch Python series from Arduino. So perfect. Yeah, I'll tell you what, I am going to start them very soon. Okay, that's the next thing I'm going to do, and I'm really going to make time to start doing them. Let's see, are you still in Texas? Yeah, so that kind of gets into my Python thing. I am in the process of relocating. Let me see if I can find something here. I am in the process of relocating to Africa, and I am getting very, very close to relocating to Africa, and I'm going to be offline for 2 or 3 months while I am in that transition thing. And so I don't want to just disappear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a whole bunch of these Python, and then Python with Arduino, and then Python with Visual Python. I'm going to make a big, huge series of those lessons, and I'm going to release those lessons once a week. And then what I'm going to do is wherever I am, I'm going to try my best to at least be online where I can premiere with you. I can sit in the chat box and talk to you as the lesson comes out, but I want to make a big batch of those things, and then I can continue having videos released while I am sort of in this transition period where I will be offline. Okay, and so let's see if I can show you my relocation plans. Let's see if I can come here. Okay, this is my house that I am building in Africa right now. You can see that it is coming along very nicely. That's my mango tree. That's a little house. I'll be living in this house while the bigger house is getting built. And then that's the big house. This is the great room. And then this is kind of a big pile of mess as they're trying to get this thing built. Just showing you some pictures of the house. These pictures were taken this morning, so this is very up-to-date pictures of the house. That's my sink. Okay, so that is what I have. I am in the middle of moving to Africa, and what my challenge is to be able to, while I'm in this transition phase, to be having videos come out. And so I've made the decision, my next series of lessons are going to be starting with Python, then Python with Arduino, Python with Arduino with VPython, and then I'm probably going to do a lot of Matplotlib in there, because Matplotlib is a very, very sophisticated Python graphing program. Lets you solve a lot of your engineering problems if you can do graphing. Okay, very cool. I like Python. Please keep making more videos on Arduino related stuff. Okay, that'll be good. Getting some nice thing. Not, you know, that house that I showed you there, that house, the price of that house is less than the homes that just about any of you guys would be living in, because everything is made, the whole house is made out of mud bricks. Bricks are made on location. You kind of make bricks and you pile them up, and all those poles were cut by nearby. So when you use indigenous supplies, the house ends up not costing very much. Okay, let's see. Gareth lives in South Africa. I'm being a little bit vague of where specifically I'm going for security reasons, so I don't say exactly where I am and exactly where I'm going. I travel back and forth between Africa and the United States quite a bit, and so I try to be a little bit vague about where I am at any given point, because it's not like I want to put a sign, come rob my house, I'm on the other side of the earth, if you know what I mean. Okay. Please keep making more videos about Arduino. Yes, that's good. That's what I'm trying to do. Okay, looking forward to the Python series. Solar panels with coffee plants. Okay, I am going with coffee plants. Yes, I have coffee plants that are planted already, so I will be growing my own coffee beans over there. I, in the end, made a decision to not go with solar, because to really be off the grid with solar, you have to have batteries, and batteries are very, very high maintenance, and they're very expensive, and batteries are not easy to take care of. And so I don't want to deal with batteries. So I ran an electric line down the river to a dam that's a hydroelectric dam, and so I'll have hydroelectric power, and then in the times that that's not working, I'll have an on-site generator. So I am going with what is this nonsense, man? Don't repeat yourself. That is not nice. Don't repeat yourself. Say something once, okay? All right. Will you do a Python series? That's just what we were talking about. Yeah, we will do a Python series. So my property in Africa is run by hydroelectric power, and then when that's not working, it is a diesel generator. And then what I am going to do is I pump water from the river, and so I'm going to put solar on the pump, so I can always, no matter what, I can always have water. And so that is the deal. Back to Arduino, I went up to the tutorial 68 using the remote control. Is that the last in that series? Yes, that's the last in that series, but what you could do is you could go do the Elegoo smart car if you wanted more Arduino, or very soon I'll have that Python series coming out. Okay, let's see. Yes, I'm finding out the problems with batteries firsthand. Yeah, solar is all clean and green until you get to those big nasty batteries, and those batteries don't last forever, and those batteries can explode, and those batteries have all kinds of chemicals. So the idea of solar being clean and green, not so much, really, not so much. Okay, let's see. Did you know that there are more numbers containing the number 1, all in-digit numbers without? Okay, that's Ujwai. That's a lot of math there, so I can't quite follow it, but I'll take your word for it. A lot of countries are interested in East Africa logistically for some reason. Okay. Man, I'll kind of tell you what's going on. And this is just an observation that, the richest soil in the world, the richest farmland in the world is like East Africa. And there are certain Asian countries that are going in and basically taking over those countries. And the way they do it is like they'll come in and they will give these just spectacular loans to those countries, very low interest rates and these humongous amounts of money. And then for collateral, they take the ports. Well, politicians and individuals, man, they want free money, so they go borrow the money without understanding they're not going to be able to pay it back. And then there are some East African countries that already these Asian countries own the port because the ports were taken for lack of payment on loans. And similarly, they loaned money to farmers. And so you'll see like this little indigenous farmer who, kind of like really mud hut, grass roof type of thing. And he has a $35,000 New Holland tractor, and he is driving a little pile of charcoal to market. That little pile of charcoal is probably worth 50 cents, and he's driving it to market in a $35,000 tractor. How did he do that? Well, he borrowed from the Chinese. So the Chinese loaned this farmer with no income $35,000. Okay, he gets his tractor. Then he's unable to make the payment on the tractor. Oh, and the tractor was made in China. So they loaned the farmer $35,000, and immediately he sends the $35,000 back to China and gets this tractor. Okay, in 6 months, he can't make his payments, and so China has the $35,000 that they loaned him because it went back to China. And then they take the tractor back because he couldn't make the payment on it. And then after he couldn't make the payment on it, they own his farm as well. And so it's kind of like China has their $35,000, they have their tractor back, and they got a farm for free that's one of the richest pieces of farmland in the world. And so a lot of these Asian countries are basically in sort of silently taking over these East African countries by making loans that they know cannot be paid back. Hope this doesn't sound political, but it's just, I very much love Africa and love the African people, and I see them kind of in the process of really losing because they're getting themselves into borrowing money that there's no way that they are going to be able to pay it back. Yes, one of those large East Asia countries put their first military base there as well. Yeah, and man, you would just be surprised how many of these East Asian tentacles are ending up in Africa. And so I love all people. I want to be friends with everybody. Everybody's welcome on this channel. I'm not disparaging any group of people. I am just saying that it seems like throughout history the poor guy always gets exploited, and he's been exploited by many, many people, not just the Asians. And so throughout history, the small guy is always the one that gets exploited, and I'm afraid that's what I am seeing in Africa right now. Man, hope this didn't sound political, because one thing I do not do is I don't talk about politics, but the question came up of why there was such geopolitical interest in East Africa, and that is it could be the breadbasket of the world. It's a year-round growing season, lots of rain, richly fertile soil, and right now the land is owned by indigenous farmers who are out there with a hoe growing food by hand. But a country that brought in more modern agricultural techniques to that, they could feed their entire nation doing that. Okay, enough of this political talk. All right, economically, this is a sound strategy, but unethical. Yeah, it's brilliant, but it's also evil. Okay, yep, exactly like the housing crash in 2007. People were given loans that had no chance of being able to pay it. So what causes the bubble to burst? Man, Gene, I don't know. What I just see, though, is I see a train wreck, and you're like asking me what the train wreck looks like. I don't know, but I see two trains on the same track heading head on to each other, and I just know it's not going to be pretty. But that's kind of what I what I see. Yes, all love for sure, world peace. Yep. I like everybody, right? I've got so many friends that are Asian. I've got so many friends that are Indian. I have so many friends that are African. I mean, really, I have a heart for Africa, and so I want to get along with everybody. And I just don't like seeing anybody getting. I don't like seeing anybody getting taken advantage of. Okay, do you have any advice for 14-year-old trying to be an engineer? Yes, learn your math. Learn your math. Learn your math. Take all of my all the engineering videos on my channel. Go over to Khan Academy and do your math and engineering math, and do it while you're still in high school, so when you go to college you'll have a chance to survive. All right, would love to see your tutorials on HC05 if you have interest in those models. Remind me what an HC05 is. I recognize it, but I'm not remembering what it is. Looking forward to Python. Okay, any examples of biology programming examples? Not something I have done in the past, so I really can't comment on that. Okay, guys, looks like we just hit the 1 hour mark, and I don't like to make these things so long that they get boring. And this was a little bit different topic today. It's just something I found fascinating. Hopefully some of you guys liked it. It's just I find numbers interesting, and I like see patterns in numbers. And as I look at numbers and see patterns, I want to understand those patterns, and thought I would just share that with you, something a little bit different. We had a little bit of a chance to talk about my future here and the future of the channel. And so really appreciate it. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Hope that you'll come back next week. Paul McWhorter from TopTechBoy.com. I will talk to you guys later.